welcome to the Aspiring Clinical Psychologist channel. So I'll just introduce very briefly what I'm hoping to do with this space, and then we'll jump into the main content of the video. So my name is Julia, and I'm currently working as an assistant psychologist in neuro rehab. Previously to that, I did a AP position in a memory clinic, and then my first job out of uni after my master's was to be a rehab assistant at a hospital. So I'm hoping that here we can discuss anything and everything to do with the journey to becoming a clinical psychologist, which, as you might be aware of, can be full of, ups and downs, but it's just such an interesting field to be interested in. So yeah, just hoping to discuss anything from the application process to how to improve your application, to the sort of experiences that might be useful to gain when you are still studying or when you are already working, how to improve your application, what it's like to be an AP in all these different fields, but also what it's like to be a research assistant or to do a PhD, to be a PWP, or to explore, any of these alternative careers as well. So for that, I'm hoping to get help from some of my friends and colleagues, because I just found it really useful to talk to them, or even to go on YouTube and to watch videos like this one, to see what people are saying, what people are up to. There's only so much that my own brain can come up with by myself. So yeah, I'm hoping you'll join me on this journey, which is a little bit experimental. For example, I'm hoping that the video is sort of relatively straight, because the phone is standing on an airing rack, which then has a cushion, a metal tin, and then the phone itself is being held by this weird coconut instrument. So this is my homemade tripod. Anyway, all of that being said, yeah, I hope you can join me on this journey and we can learn together. And yeah, let's get to it.
Cool. So welcome, Jennifer, take two. So yeah, Jennifer and I go back quite a long time, 15 years now. We met in secondary school. We happened to go to the same college. We both did psychology undergrad, and then we're now both on this journey to become clinical psychologists, but in slightly different places. So for myself, I applied once. I managed to get a reserve for an interview, which became an interview, and then it was a reserve place, which didn't become a place. And then Jennifer, I think you applied a few times, but then actually this year you did really, really, really well. So it was just really, really useful for me to just catch up with you and kind of reflect on what you did and what helped. And it's definitely helped me. So I'm hoping the virtual world will be helped by this as well. So yeah, maybe just introduce yourself sort of in terms of how many times you applied, what that has been like, and then just very briefly what kind of experience you had after your undergrad and now to getting the place.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Jennifer, like Julia said, and after I finished my undergrad, I worked a year as a support worker in a mental health hospital, secure unit but low secure, and it was mostly for people who've got learning disabilities, or a lot of them had some sort of learning disability. And I did that for a year. That's what in my head I said, I'm going to do this for a year because I know that the sort of like the experience would be really, really meaningful. I didn't even bother to try and get assistant roles. I was just like, I'm not doing that to myself. So I just graduated, got a support worker role, did that for a year, and I was like, I would quite like to try something else. So I tried some similar roles. I tried an assistant practitioner role, which is still in a hospital, but more, I guess it's more aligned to what nurses would do. So I applied for that and I nearly ended up getting that. And then I got an offer for a job as a research assistant, and it was quite a difficult decision for some reason. I remember back then being like, oh my God, what do I do? I don't know which one to pick. Do I stick to the secure unit stuff, which I'm familiar with, or move really far away and try research, which I did enjoy my undergrad, but I've never done it before. But at the end, I just thought, you know what, research is probably more aligned to what I would need, or the experience I would need. So that's what I ended up choosing in the end. And that's what I did for 3.5 years, almost 4, really. It's weird talking about it, because on the surface of it, it's not like I did loads of different jobs and had different roles and stuff, but it's just basically 2 different roles. But I guess it's more what I did within that research role, I think, is probably what made the difference. So yeah, like Julia also mentioned, I applied a few times. First time I applied was in 2018. I didn't get anything. It was 4 straight no's, but to be expected. Second
Was that
time
how long did you work? Did you work already for 1 year, or when did you, or which point was that?
2 years,
2 years.
because yeah, it would have been 2000. Yeah, 2 years going up. Yeah, pretty much 2 years. Got nothing. Then I applied the following year. I also knew that I wasn't going to get anything because I really wanted to get some experience doing some form of therapy or something, like a secondment, but that didn't really work out before I applied the second time, so I didn't have much hope either. And I wasn't surprised when I didn't get much, because I don't feel like I did. Nothing really had changed from that first time to the second. But then between that time and the third time, that's when I feel like I did the most. And that's when I tried loads of different things. And I felt like, okay, actually, I feel I can actually give it a shot this time. And I put so much more effort into it. And I'm so lucky, really lucky that it paid off. So yeah, that is a brief overview. Do you want me to go into a bit more detail about the different things?
Well, I feel like you can brag a little bit that this time around when you applied, you got 3 interviews, right? 3 out of 4.
Yes,
which
I
is
did.
huge. That's a huge difference, right?
I mean, it is a massive difference. It was just so reassuring, because when I was like working towards it, I just kept thinking, oh my God, what if I did all this job, like spent all these hours writing this and rewriting it, like absolutely nothing. I'd be absolutely devastated. But I'm really glad and quite lucky that it wasn't the case this time around. But yeah, that last year, definitely this last year made such a difference in terms of things. Yeah,
it's actually a good lesson to kind of keep persevering as well. So you had 3 interviews this third time around, and then you went to the first interview, and then you made it onto the second reserve, which is really high up in the reserve list. And then the second interview you got straight away, like you just got an offer, which is awesome. And then you declined the third interview because the second one was your choice.
That's what I wanted.
So maybe it would have been 3 out of 3, which is awesome as well. Which is why I thought it would be good to just have kind of pick your brains and see what you did differently, which I guess is the main sort of point of this video. So I guess again, it's a question that we can unpick, but basically the question is, what do you think made the difference?
Well, to start with, you always hear about, like, and I know there are quite a handful of people out there who have probably got on without ever having an AP role, because sometimes they say, oh, you must have an AP, or people believe that you have to have an AP role to be able to go into the clinical. Just to say that that's not really the case. It might help in terms of giving you a good idea of what the role actually involves, but like this time around, I did manage to arrange like a job swap within my role. So my team, they're really nice and really supportive, in the sense that if they know that you've got like other aspirations, like, or things that you want to move on to, they will do their best to try and support that development and see what they can do to help you achieve that. So for me, I really wanted to do like a day a week job swap, working as an assistant psychologist at a local prison, just to get an idea of what idea of therapy, how it is to like conduct it, or formulation, all these like basics of what forms some of the roles of clinical psychologist. And I was really glad that I got that sorted, but in reality I didn't actually do much of it. It's like, of course, there was COVID, and there was like a huge outbreak at the prison, and management were just kind of like, oh, it's really unsafe. And I was like, this is not really worth my life. Let me just like, play it safe, just like keep it, just work from home and just see if things change like in the new year. That was what my plan was anyway. But that being said, just having the opportunity to, I did manage to get a few shadowing sessions in with the assistant psychologist who was working there, and had like maybe it was like 2 like supervisions with a clinical psychologist. Really nothing in depth or anything, but just that brief sort of experience or insight really helped me a lot in terms of actually knowing what I didn't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In terms of when I had to prepare for like interviews, I knew then, oh, because before formulations I'd hear it, but I was like, I didn't actually know what the heck it was. So I had like a basis of where to start with in terms of further reading and having to, you know, wrap my head around things that might come up or how some questions might be phrased in interviews. So even though it didn't work out in the sense of me actually being able to, you know, maybe take on a small caseload and see people and do therapy, just being able to shadow and get an idea of what it's about really did help me. So that's one thing I feel like something I was able to reflect on in my application. Another thing which I
so
felt
just to go with that one,
yeah.
I think that's a really good point, because we often think about extra things that we can do on top of what we're already doing.
Yeah.
But actually, I think you thought about sort of outside the box of this kind of job swap. So especially if someone is working in the NHS already, maybe you can have a connection elsewhere to have like a half a day, or, you know, just really make an effort and try to find someone. So for myself, so my first job was as a rehab assistant, but I was mainly working with physios, OTs, and speech and language therapists. But we did have a clinical psychologist on the team as well. So I tried to be, you know, buddies with her, and it was really helpful to shadow, to kind of see what she did. Especially because I think in applications, it's really helpful if you had some contact with a clinical psychologist, just both for yourself, but also there are buzzwords like, you know, I was supervised by a clinical psychologist, so they're definitely helpful. So I think it's a good place to start. Go on.
Exactly. Well, so that was really helpful. And another one, actually, this bit, it did start off around the time of the second time that I applied. So around the second time I applied, there was like a scheme that was sent around in the team, like the NIHR were doing like a small grant scheme where they were offering like up to £1,000 to fund some small scale research project. And the theme that time was like service engagement, something like that. So if you had like a research idea, you could like write a proposal and then send it off to them. And if they felt like it was feasible, they felt like you know, you brought something new, they would give you some money to, you know, bring this project to fruition and explore your question. So I did something, I saw it and I was like, oh, actually, I've got, you know, an idea, because I didn't really mention, but in my role, I started off as a research assistant, and then I worked, then I became a research practitioner. So in that role, it involves like managing or leading the delivery of like a psychosis research project. So mostly what I do in my day-to-day job is like a research delivery of a psychosis research study. I don't know why I find that really difficult to explain. And yeah, at first when I started it, because I've been working on this study since I first joined the team, I was working on it, and then I worked in it at different phases. So in the final phase of like a randomized controlled trial, that's when I got the job to help deliver the research in my area of Devon. But what I found quite difficult was finding, you know, sometimes, you know, it's not very nice, but they sometimes describe like the psychosis population as like, you know, difficult to engage or hard to reach, all that stuff. But I try to, you know, like, why is that? Is there like a piece of research out there that has investigated why this might be, or ways that we can, you know, reach them a bit better? But there wasn't really anything out there in terms of how they prefer to be contacted about research. So the proposal I had for that small grant scheme was to explore this. So to like have like an open-ended sort of interview or questionnaire with people who have a psychosis diagnosis to try and understand, you know, how they would prefer to be contacted about research. So that's what the proposal was about. That's what I wrote, you know, I fleshed it out a bit, and they were able to give me some money to explore this, which was just absolutely, I was ecstatic about this. And then over like the course of the last year, during the pandemic, I had some, I guess, extra time on my hand to sort of like use the studies to use the findings and write it up and try and see if I can get it published somewhere. And I did manage to do that. And I think that was definitely a massive game changer in terms of my application this year, because I was able to say that I went through the actual research process of like doing a mini literature review, writing a proposal, data collecting, finding participants, analyzing the data, writing it up, literally the whole spectrum of the research project. So yeah, that helped massively. And seen as like, the training is like really research heavy. If you can show them that you've been involved in some sort of research and you've got like a good grasp of how research is done, that's definitely like a massive tick. So yeah, that's definitely something I think made a massive difference.
And
I think, in terms of
I think I have huge respect for you for that, like honestly, because again, it shows initiative, and you went through the whole process and you published a paper yourself. Like that's crazy. I mean, obviously, I feel like most people probably wouldn't have anything published when they do get on the doctorate, so it's not something to stress about if you don't have anything published. But it's definitely we're not trying to stress you out, but it's definitely a huge help. And I think it wasn't really something that I was thinking about at all when I was in my undergrad and doing my master's. When people were mentioning, maybe you can get something published, I was just like, okay, cool, that would be nice, but so I didn't realize how actually helpful that could be. So if you are watching this and doing your undergrad or your postgrad or whatever studies, if there is an opportunity for you to publish, like I'd really encourage that and push for that. But if not, then you can do the small grant scheme. Do you know, is it something that comes around every year, or is it?
See, I keep like, because when I tell people about this, I always end up going back and checking the website, but unfortunately they haven't updated it since 2019, which is fair enough. I mean, like with COVID, there's been a lot of like new research around like COVID and pandemic, so probably not a priority for them at the moment. But hopefully, I really hope they continue doing it. It wasn't the first time they've done it other times as well. So, and it's just such a good idea. And then also in terms of research, like even if it's not possible to like get a grant or do your own and publish your own, if you can find some way to like help someone or like seek out like a psychologist or a researcher and try and see if you can do some work for them, and if that would grant you some sort of like I can never say that word, authorship. I always say authorship. Authorship, that would be quite helpful. Or even just, it doesn't actually have to be a published piece of work, like things like poster presentations, that's so overlooked as well. I could do like a small scale audit in your service or whatever, and you can just go to a conference that might, your trust might be holding, or somewhere local, and if they, you can ask, I've got like this piece of work, would it be okay for me to like present it or just have a poster up? That also counts as publication, because you put some information together and it's out there, you're sharing that knowledge, definitely count. So I think there are just so many ways to like sort of get involved in research or do something research related. And some people even try to publish like their thesis, like their master's thesis. Like if it's a really good enough quality, it definitely can be, because these pieces of research, they are original, you're finding something new or like a gap in the literature that no one else has really explored before. And it's such a shame that so much research goes to waste because it's never put out there or it's never published. So it's just about finding the time, I guess, because life happens and you've got work, and then you come back from work and it's like, I don't want to be staring at screens or writing stuff. But if you can make the time to sort of find a journal that that aligns with what you've written about, read up about how they want their manuscript to be presented, and just sort of rejig it so that it fits that sort of template, and just shoot your shot. What's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, if they say no, just find somewhere else. Like, it's just, I think it's just about having the time really more than anything. But if you've written a thesis, like, you've done the hard bit already, you really have. So just put it out there. And
I guess a reminder so that you don't have to do it alone as well. I think you did
Exactly.
a lot by yourself, but actually you have, you know,
Yeah.
your supervisor if you're at uni, or you have your supervisor at work today at work. So I think I'm glad you mentioned the that it doesn't have to be a, you know, journal, research journal as well. It
Yeah.
can be all these other things as well. That's definitely something that my clinical psychologist supervisor told me last year, that you know, you can publish in other places as well. So even the Psychologist, or some of the bulletins, so the, you know, the BPS has like the Faculty of Older Adults or whatever else, and they, a lot of them have their own bulletins as well. So you can get in contact with authors there and see what kind of an article you might be able to write. I guess you could potentially write a blog post on some of these sort of more pop psychology websites as well. And they're not going to be looked at in the same way as something more official. So I don't know if it would score you points exactly, but it might be something fun. It might be something to do anyway. So there are definitely a lot, maybe more than we think about, more options to kind of go about publishing something somewhere.
Definitely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Okay, so that's the second thing I mentioned. Another thing I feel like was quite important, and something else that I was able to reflect on. Look at me using the word reflect.
It's so key. My gosh, it's so key. Crazy.
That's like an NHS thing. I'm trying to remember exactly what they called it, but it was like the BAME Stepping Up Leadership Scheme. And that was really great. It was, again, it was something that was sent around in the emails. And my manager thought, you know, you should definitely go for this. You can, you know, apply. You had to like, and the idea of it was to basically, it's for like people from BAME background. For that, the one I applied to was for the Southwest. They have different ones across the country, and who are thinking about or in a leadership sort of role, or thinking about taking on leadership roles. And the idea of the scheme is to sort of like bring them all together. It's, first of all, I think big part of it is networking, because I got to meet so many other people who I didn't even know about, who are, some of them are working in the same trust as me, and others were scattered around the Southwest, but also like to sort of teach or, you know, show them like what their leadership skills could be, and, you know, the value they can bring to the NHS as people from minority backgrounds, and how, you know, they can really capitalize on that, and how, you know, it's very, very valuable in, you know, in the work environment that we're in, because, you know, we serve such a diverse community, and it's quite good for us to, you know, to be a reflection of the communities that we serve, if that makes sense. So it was a really good scheme in terms of like learning and gaining leadership skills, and reflecting on the things that we can do and how we can bring leadership at every level of our jobs. Because sometimes you think about leadership being, you know, this big thing when you're like a band or whatever, but leadership can literally be at any level. You know, it's just about like being a, you know, influencing and being a positive example and things like that. So it was really, really great. We haven't even finished it yet because they kept cancelling it because of COVID. But at the end of this month, that will be like the last of the modules that we're doing. Unfortunately, it won't be face to face, it will be over on Teams, but it's quite nice to be able to reconnect and see everyone and just sort of finally sort of like wrap things up. But that's been really pinnacle, not just in terms of like, you know, my experience, what I could talk about, but just in terms of like meeting really amazing people. And what I learned from it is just like the power of, you know, just having that support network of just knowing that there are people there who you can talk to and you can share ideas with. And I think it was really having me get over my fear of not wanting to like reach, like ask for help or ask someone how to do this or do that, because it just, there is, you know, you just can't do it on your own or by yourself. You have to connect and, you know, share ideas with people to be able to, you know, I guess, I don't know, just in terms of like growth and just being inspired. It was just
being
so
on this journey, in general can be so competitive that you kind of create your own bubble within yourself and you don't share your ideas because, oh, what if someone takes them? But it's nonsense, and you can learn so much from other people.
Exactly.
For sure.
And people are so happy to help as well. They really are, especially when they know they've been through it, they know how hard it can be. There's that sense of like solidarity or camaraderie, another word I can't say. And it's just a lot easier instead of just carrying it all by yourself. You can talk to other people about it and share ideas and feel less alone in all of it.
That's kind of psychology. That's what we're about. Just talk to others.
So I think those were the three main things I'd say.
So just to go back to the last one, so because you said it's an NHS Leadership Scheme, and leadership, as we know, I mean, it's again another buzzword and another huge thing in being a clinical psychologist, and so it's something that they look for in trainee clinical psychologists or potential trainees. So just if you can tell us a little bit, so because there are different schemes that you can apply to, right? So if you type in NHS Leadership Scheme, this will come up. And the one that you are talking about, it's for people who self-identify as BAME, and I think you have to be band 5 as well. Is that right?
Yeah, band 5 and above. Yeah.
And is it something that you do? Some of it is online, and then some of it was face to face, and then it's reflections. Or how did it?
It was actually like, because I know some online ones are more like consistent, you have to complete so many modules online, but this one was literally in total, it was supposed to be 5 days. So the first module was like a 3-day thing, where it was all supposed to be face to face.
Did you have to take time off work for that, or is it?
Yeah, it's supported by your work. So like you don't have to like take time. For me, counted as part of my study days. So that's what I booked it in as. So in total it was just 5 days, and it was supposed to be in a course of like a few months with some gaps in between, but because of COVID it just kept being cancelled, and we had to have other bridging sessions just to catch up and check in and to see that we're all doing okay with everything that's going on. So it actually didn't take up that much time. There was some homework we had to do in preparation for it, but it was in total it's just 5 days really, but they do fit in a lot of information and a lot of group work, a lot of that within that time period. So I would really recommend it.
But even if you don't self-identify as BAME, right, or if you're not band 5, because a lot of us will be working below that, there are different schemes that you can sign up for as well. So there's one that I've signed up for. I haven't done it yet. I just signed up, so I can't really say much about it, but there are things that are free and open to anyone, like absolutely anyone working in the NHS. And this particular one, so the sort of the bottom level that you start at, you can do all online, so you don't even have to you get permission from your work, but you don't need any study days. So I think it's easy to sell to your manager, right? I'm doing this leadership scheme. You don't need to do anything. I'm going to do everything. I just need you to kind of agree to it. So definitely check out the website, and hopefully you'll find something that will be able to help you.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that was pretty much the key things that made a difference. But on top of all of that, I mean, I could have had all that experience, but if I didn't really know how to put it down on paper or write about it, I think another thing is one of the big barriers to the application process is actually knowing how to structure your personal statement or application, because it's just we have such limited characters, but you're like, but I've got all these things I want to talk about, how do I fit it all in? And it's like, you have to be reflective, I'm just like, what does reflection even mean?
No, I really want to, if my editing skills are up to it, I really want to like have a reflection counter. Whenever we say the word reflect, it just goes up 1 point, because it's really key, right? So it's not just what we do, but it's the way we reflect on what we've already done. So even 1 year to another, your application in terms of experience maybe potentially didn't change that much, but actually the way you reflect and write about what happened can make all the difference. So what do you so in terms of, I think you started sort of talking about it, but what do you think made the difference in the way you wrote your application then?
Well, I just got people to look at it, and I said, just rip it apart. Don't go easy. Just tell me what is wrong with it. So that's what I did, basically. That's what I mean about not being so shy to ask for help. So I forgot to mention, but during the pandemic, I was seconded 2 days a week, working on there was a recovery cell that was set up within our trust, and the idea of it was to sort of analyze loads of information and find literature and just prepare. How do we prepare for this pandemic? How many people do we expect to be seeing? Doing a lot of like surveys with like service users and staff. Or are the changes working? What can we do differently? So as part of that, that was also really great because I got to do like a couple of like, what do they call it? It's not like a literature review. It's like I forgot what they call it, but it's just like a very small scale literature review of like just like a literature scope, I don't know what the word is, of just what information is out there and what is the information telling us and what can we base this on, blah, blah. So that actually I put it down as part of like the publications that I've had because I wrote it. It's out there somewhere. It wasn't like peer reviewed or anything, but I used my research skills to do. But also whilst working in this like recovery cell, it was great because I just got to step out of like the research bubble a bit, because we're so privileged in research because it's really well funded and we can literally just stay in our own little research bubble, just doing research, but the entire sort of trust and other teams are going, are doing things, but we're not always directly involved with them in that way. But that recovery cell secondment was great because I got to work with different clinicians from loads of different teams, and I got a bit more of an idea of how different teams function and how they were set up. And from that, there was a clinical psychologist as well, as that was part of this recovery cell. And she was the epitome, think about a clinical psychologist. She was that, like, talks really calm, asks questions, asks questions, and, isn't afraid to be critical. Just like she had this really nice sense, this really nice aura about her. And I was like, she has to look at my application. I am really, really keen for her to just like critique my work. So I got in touch with her and I just said, it would really mean a lot to me if you have the time to just, look over my application. And she, she was really happy to, and, she gave me loads of really useful feedback. And yeah, she wasn't the only person. There was another person. Oh my god, this one was the most random thing. I don't even have Twitter, but I was like on the internet, just like on psychology Twitter, just like reading all the threads, like the BPS website and the minorities groups website and all of that, because I just like to stay up to date with what's going on. And around like application seasons, they're really good in terms of like putting up adverts of people saying, oh, if anyone's really happy to like review applications, please just reply to this tweet. And I found one. I was a bit late and like loads of people have already said stuff and so loads of people have already replied. I'm just like, oh my god, no, I'm too late. But I scrolled a bit. I just kept scrolling. There was this one other clinical psychologist who said, yeah, I'm quite happy to look at it, but I'm mostly research. And I'm like, well, I'm mostly research. But I didn't have an account. I was like, oh my god, how do I get in contact with her? So I googled her and I found like her research page. What's that research website where people make research accounts? ResearchGate, that's it. I found her ResearchGate and I messaged her on that. I was thinking there was no way she's gonna see this. And within a few hours she replied and she's like, yes, I really got to look at it. And I think she was like such a game changer. She was happy to like Skype, like Zoom meet, do a Zoom meet with me and have a chat with me about it. And she just explained it to me, like how it works in terms of like, she just made it sound so, when she said it just seemed so, like, of course, she was like, this is like a job application. When you apply for a job and you look at the person specification, that's what you have to treat this as. Like, look at like the competence of a clinical psychologist, read it up, and then in your application, you need to like show how you meet those competencies. That's what she said. And I was just like, wow. Oh, okay. And yeah, that was just, I just feel like, oh, that just makes so much sense now. It was still really difficult because, you have to find that balance between not just saying what you did, but what did you learn from it, and, reflecting on it and how does it tie in to being a clinical psychologist. But I feel like once I felt like I got what the recipe was to how to structure a personal statement, I felt like, okay, now I've got it. I've got the tools, I've got the experience, I have an idea of how to structure it. I just had to then just I spent so long writing it, Julia. I spent so long. I ended up memorizing it off by heart. That's how often I reread it. It was, even if I was there lying in bed, I was still editing it in my head. It's so nuts. And I'd wake up and I'm like, oh, before I go to bed, I was like, oh no, this sentence needs to be changed. And I'm like making note of it on my phone, and oh, it was nuts. It was absolutely nuts, Julia.
Yeah.
But that's how I worked, and I guess it paid off, really. I was just probably worked in it probably a bit too much, but I just couldn't leave anything to chance this time around.
Yeah, do you know, I feel like this section should be called like no clinical psychologist as a supervisor, no problem. Because a lot of people think, oh man, I need to get the assistant psych position, and if I'm not supervised by a clinical psychologist, you know, what am I going to do? But actually, yeah, get help. There are a lot of people out there willing to help, because it is such a difficult, you know, application process and field to get into. So wait, go back again. How did you find the people who might be willing to help out? Are there any specific, you know, feeds or pages, whatever they call them?
Okay, so one of the places which I never actually used was the Clinical Psychology Forum. So around like application time, like the lady who runs it, Miriam, she'll do something like, I'm happy to review some statements, but you have to donate to a charity for it. So I never really used her, but that's one that I know that's definitely out there.
Yeah, I know that she does kind of postmortems, they call them. So this is actually after you applied and you weren't successful. Okay, so how can you help? So actually, it might be maybe a good idea, not just when you are writing your application or have written it, to send it to someone to have a look at, but even at this stage right now, you know, if we haven't been successful, get someone to look at your application and then say, you know, what else is missing and what could I have said and what kind of experience am I missing? Because we still have, for us applying next time in November, like 6 months to come up with ideas of what we can do, which is enough time to do something at least.
Exactly. So she's there. I think I think she does only do postmortems. So she does something in that sense of like an application. I don't know if it's before, I think it's after actually. But on Twitter, just around application season, if you just type in clinical, I don't know, I don't even remember, but psychologist. Clinical psychology, I don't know, search something. But for me, I think it was on the BPS minorities group. I think that's where I found the specific one that I was talking about. But I think for that, it would be like you'd have to fall under like the minorities category. But apart from that, there are loads of different threads. Around application, and there are definitely people out there who make a thread and people who reply saying that they're happy to review people's person statements. So just around that time, just keep your eyes peeled on the psychology part of Twitter. And then if such thread pops up, just don't be afraid to just get in touch. It's usually like current trainees or current clinical psychologists, but you do have to act quick because, you know, they're busy and there's some people can only read maybe like 2 or 3. So
and I guess if you are already working for the NHS, just even if you are not supervised by someone, just there must be someone in the organization or someone probably closer than you think who is a clinical psychologist. So don't be afraid, I guess, to approach them as well. The worst thing they can say is no, which is fine. You just ask someone else. So.
Precisely, that's it.
And I'm thinking of another thing. So the thing that I'm going to do, I think for next year that I've sort of started, and I think I told you about it, is there is a Counselling Skills Level 2 course, which I don't remember who it's accredited by, someone, essentially, an introduction to sort of counselling skills at level 2. And the reason I'm doing it is because it's free, because it can't hurt me. I think it's fully funded right now by the government or something, and it's all based online, and there are 4 different weeks, sort of 4 different modules that you do. And actually I'm finding it quite helpful. It's all online as well, so you can do it in your time. Some of it is fairly basic, some of it's sort of theory and maybe things you would have covered in undergrad, but actually it's good to go in a little bit more depth, and it's good to refresh these things as well. And the fun thing in week 2 was that you one of the things you could do was to record myself, have a sort of counselling session with one of my housemates, and someone's going to critique that as well. So I think that would be really helpful to have it on video and just to watch myself back and
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's something that I'm going to mention in my application or not.
I think,
but it's definitely, I think so. I think some people say that sometimes it's not good if you have too many sort of, maybe if you're already a CBT therapist, sometimes that can be seen as not such a good thing as well. I think is what I've been told. This is just going sort of off script. Because then maybe you have sort of preconceived ideas already, and maybe you won't be able to be formed as a psychologist as easy. I don't know. Anyway, but I think it's definitely good just for my skill set. So again, it's free, so definitely something I think to consider as well. And it's not, it's a bit time consuming, but it's not that bad.
I think it's definitely relevant because that, competency of like, doing therapy, you can definitely write stuff about that and what you've learned from it and how, that would prepare you for training. I think 100%, yeah. Completely relevant, yeah.
Right, I think we've sort of covered the main bits and the things that I just remember being really, really helpful when we talked for the first time. Anything else that you can think of, or otherwise any closing remarks, any sort of summary or any tips in general?
I think start early. For me, I started early because it's such a long process, and then it comes around again so quickly before you know it. Oh my goodness, it's like application deadline season. But for me, I think I probably started working on it in August time, just so I could take it easy, draft and redraft. You have more time to collect your thoughts, because that's another thing about reflecting. Like, you do things, there's loads of things that you've done, but sometimes I'm not very good at keeping diaries or whatever, but because I started early, it was great for me to sort of like recall those things and those experiences I've had and think of how do I put this together, how do I make it relevant to clinical training and what I'm trying to achieve. And also what helped me a lot in terms of that was I listened to a lot of podcasts, because that also helped me in terms of my reflecting. Hearing other people talk about their experiences, it triggers like, oh my God, yeah, of course, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like I experienced that too. I've been there. So just there's something really inspiring. I guess it's sort of what we do now, but hearing other people's experiences, it is like I learned that way. Definitely really like re-energizes me and gets me really excited to do things. So I immerse myself in a lot of like podcasts. What was that one?
Can you mention any good ones that you recommend?
One of the first ones was like Psychology, let's get to clinical. That's like a really classic one.
Isn't that's the pre-qualification BPS group? I think that
I think
runs
so.
It.
Yeah, I think it is. There's another one like it's called like What About Us? Something about diversity in clinical psychology, and this is set up by some trainees or qualified. It was basically associated with the University of Bath, but it's called What About, I need to find it, I'll send you and you can like put it in the links or whatever, because that was a really, really good one in terms of like really understanding why diversity is needed in the field of clinical psychology. And during like, I guess, leading on from that, when I had interviews and I was preparing for interviews, I listened to a lot of like discovering community psychology, because that's like a sort of sort of psychology that really excites me, just listening to it, I was like, oh my God, I am so buzzing, I want this so bad.
Have like a Spotify like psychology playlist playing in the background. I'm gonna write.
It was like me like cooking, like, oh my God, so inspired. So I did a lot of just listening to other people talk about their experiences, and I just felt
actually, if I can jump in there as well, there are a lot of YouTube channels, or a few that are definitely really, really helpful. So there's is it the Oxford Psychologist or something?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, she's so cool. and she's very, very helpful, and there's a few others as well.
The Worry People, I absolutely, she's probably my favorite. she's so Miranda. Okay, sorry, I'm going a little bit.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I think, yeah, again, actually this has been helpful for me as well. So we covered, what did we cover? So we covered some actual concrete things that you can do, hopefully to help out. So you mentioned the the NHS Leadership Scheme. That was one of them.
Yeah.
What were the first things you mentioned? So the publishing paper with this scheme, specific small grant scheme, or any other way to publish as well. You mentioned the counselling skills, reflecting more, speaking to other people, getting help from all these things. So, and
Job
reflecting
swap,
better.
if you can.
Job swap, that was the first one. That was that was the I think the one that maybe people forget about, but definitely helpful. Anyway, all right, thank you so much. Hopefully this has been helpful. Actually, it'd be cool to maybe do some more videos in the future to sort of go into more depth what it's like to work at the place you worked at, because I remember it was super cool, because I think you started working before I did. I was still studying, so you were like the really cool person that's already working at a hospital and low security, and you have some really fun and interesting stories. So that'd be wink wink. That would be interesting to hear about, but also just what it's like kind of day to day working as a research assistant, and how does it differ to then being a research practitioner where you're sort of reading a little bit more. So that would be super interesting at some point. All right.
No, that'd be
Thanks
fantastic.
very much.
I'd love that. Yeah, it's really nice chatting again and catching up. And I hope this is helpful to someone out there.
One person, come on. All right. See ya.
All right, bye. Bye-bye.
So that concludes the first video. I'm hoping that you found it useful somehow and interesting. If you have any suggestions on the sort of topics that we can cover in the future, how to improve these videos, or really anything, do drop a comment, do say hello. Likewise, if you did find it interesting and useful, and see some potential in it, because first video, do make sure you subscribe as well. I do have some hopefully good ideas of things and videos to cover in the future. I hope you have a good week ahead wherever you're watching this, and thanks for watching. PS bonus content. If you made it this far, well done. This is the coconut setup that occasionally kept slipping.